Hello, I am Purnendu Chatterjee, a member expert committee on school education, and I have with me my colleague, Mr. Ratul Guho.
Hello.
And in this first session, we will take you through the general principles of the curriculum, syllabus, textbook, and evaluation pattern that has been developed by the expert committee on school education. As a brief note, I would like to state that the expert committee on school education was conceived by our Honorable Chief Minister in 2011, and since then this committee has formulated, designed, fashioned, and refashioned the curriculum, syllabus, textbook, evaluation pattern, including identification of learning outcomes throughout this period. Now, to begin with, I will be beginning with the general principles behind the formulation of the curriculum, syllabus, and textbook, and then after that we will be shifting to the principle behind the evaluation pattern, how the pedagogical process can be collated with the learning outcome that will be also taking place in this session alone. Now, as far as the general principles on curriculum, syllabus, and textbooks is concerned, we had, as you can see in the slide, we had 4 pillars that we dearly followed in preparing the curriculum, syllabus, and textbooks. These pillars were the learning without burden, which is the Yashpal Committee report, that learning without burden report. The second one was the National Curriculum Framework 2005. The third was the Right to Education Act 2009. And the fourth pillar was actually Delors' 4 pillars of learning, which was a report given by Jacques Delors. Originally, the report was named as Learning the Treasure Within. Now, first thing first, how does this Learning Without Burden report collate to our curriculum, syllabus, and textbooks? Now, the Learning Without Burden report mentions 2 types of burden that affect the education of a child. One is the physical burden of textbooks. It's the physical burden of textbooks. If you have many textbooks given to little children, that is itself a physical burden. And the second burden is, that was mentioned in the report, is the burden of non-comprehension, that classes are going on and a particular child is not understanding what he or she is being taught. So that non-comprehension, the filters of non-comprehension gather, and as they go on gathering, piling layer upon layer of non-comprehension, it ultimately happens that the child succumbs to the blindness of non-comprehension, and as a result, they often act as dropouts. First, they become psychological dropouts with the burden of non-comprehension, and as the burden of non-comprehension becomes enormous, they want to leave school and become physical dropouts. Now, that is the first thing that we tried to negotiate in our curriculum, syllabus, and textbook, that it should not be a burden. So the number of books, when we will come to a discussion on the textbook, you will see that the number of textbooks in pre-primary class 1 and class 2 level has been kept to a minimum. And while even in class 3, 4, and 5, as we went upward, there has been a lot of integrated materials in the textbooks. So that was our first pillar. Then the second pillar, and how that influenced our curriculum, syllabus, and textbook. Then the second pillar was that of the National Curriculum Framework. Now, the National Curriculum Framework has made 2 points very clear. That the process of classroom transaction, it must move from the known to the unknown. The abstractions must come from the concrete nature of the classroom transactions. Therefore, while designing the syllabus and the textbooks, special care has been taken that when a topic is introduced, it is introduced from a child's lived experience. Otherwise, it becomes, if a textbook begins in abstraction, it becomes very difficult for the child to master the subject or to reach any type of a learning outcome. So that was the first principle of the NCF that we have followed. The second NCF point that we have checked and given much importance to is the idea that a child must have a holistic development, a sort of a 360-degree development. Hence, from the pre-primary level up to class 5, what we have done in the curriculum is that we have tried to make it graded, so that one part leads to another. There is a sort of a continuation, a sort of continuity in terms of the flow of the curriculum and the syllabus. Naturally, curriculum and syllabus are reflected in the textbooks. Therefore, maximum care has been taken to present the textbooks material in a graded way as well. Then to the third pillar, which is the Right to Education Act 2009. The Right to Education Act 2009 makes a very important point. It stresses upon the fact that a child's education must be free from trauma and fear. And one of the worst ways you can create trauma and fear is to give the student something which is beyond their lived experience. You start with something, for instance, if you are transacting the theme of transport and you start in a place where the most used means of transport is a motor van, but you introduce it with something like a metro rail or a tube rail, the entire purpose of the lesson breaks down from the middle. So, and the children are naturally afraid. So in order to make the classroom free from trauma and fear, we have tried to connect the syllabus and the textbooks with the lived experience of the child. And another point where it becomes important is this, that we have tried to design our textbook in such a manner that they follow the principles of joyful learning. A joyful learning, I'll just have a brief discourse on it, is that joyful learning can be done in two ways. One is the extrinsic joy, which is of a lower quality actually. Extrinsic joy would mean colorful textbooks, beautiful teaching learning materials, the TLMs, performance of say a song or a dance or a poem, or a rhyme in the classroom. Those are all parts of the extrinsic joy that can happen in a classroom. But another ledge of a joyful education or of joyful learning is the intrinsic joy. And that intrinsic joy is born out of a child's ability to apply what she or he has learned. And that is a joy of a very high quality, and that joy is universal. When a student learns and is able to apply her or his learning, that the joy that the student feels, that is essentially of the highest order, and it is universal. So our textbooks have been developed in such a way that children achieve that intrinsic joy, that sense of ownership of their own learning, and the ownership that leads to a sense of pleasure in the children. And the fourth pillar, of course, that I mentioned was the Delors' 4 pillars of learning: learning to know, learning to do, learning to be. I'll come to learning to be a bit later. Learning to be and learning to live together. Of course, any textbook would have a knowledge component. That is learning to know. And it would have a skill component as well, that is learning to do. But most curriculum, syllabus and textbooks do not stretch. But we have tried and stretched it beyond these 2 knowledge and skill components. We have tried to introduce the learning to be component. And learning to be component, the word be here takes the connotation of existence. That learning how to exist in a world that is changing forever. How to increase the adjustability of a child. How to teach the child the abilities to corroborate with a world, with a society that is changing so quickly. We have tried to do that. We have made it a part of our curriculum syllabus, and of course it is reflected in the textbooks. And then that learning to live together. And that is a very important one, that learning to live together, that is that a singular existence, that only I am alive, or I am living and I am prospering, is not enough. Prosperity of a society or of a country, or for that matter a civilization, depends on growth of all. It entails that everybody should develop and grow. And that's one of the components that we had in mind while designing the curriculum, syllabus, and textbooks. When we will go into the textbooks, we can show them by examples. But this learning to be, this learning to live together component, which introduces the element of empathy, is, of course, highlighted in our evaluation pattern, as will be stated by Mr. Atul Guha when he takes over. Therefore, in sum, the syllabus, curriculum, and textbooks that is followed in the government-sponsored, aided, and government schools of West Bengal are based on 4 very strong foundations. And in order to transact those lessons, one must keep in mind that while transacting the textbooks, the lessons, while helping students to achieve a certain learning outcome, they are actually helping the students to have a holistic growth, where there is cognitive growth, where there is affective development, where the psychomotor domains are improving or growing fast, and even the social and emotional intelligence of students are being taken care of. Now, having said that, what is important is that all these curriculum, syllabus, textbooks, they will have to be brought to the ground level, to the level of the classroom. These things must be applied within the classroom. Now, how to apply that? How to take these curriculum, syllabus and textbook and make it effective within the classroom? And how to assess how far the classroom transaction as well as the curriculum, syllabus and textbook have an effective impact on the learning of the students. How to assess this? This will be taken over by Mr. Ratul Guho. Of course, I'll come in towards the end though. So, over to you, Ratul.
Thank you, Purnenduda. Purnenduda has mentioned some very important educational documents. Those 4 documents played a havoc role in developing the curriculum, syllabus, textbook and the evaluation pattern of this prevailing structure. Now, we will have a brief synopsis of what Purnenduda has said and the learnings we get from these particular documents. First, Purnenduda has mentioned the document Learning Without Burden that was submitted by Professor Joshpal and his committee in the year 1993. Now, in that particular document, as Purnenduda has referred, there were 2 sorts of burdens that were mentioned. One was external burden, that was the load of the curriculum, and the second burden, that was the internal burden, the load of non-comprehension, the burden of non-comprehension. To reduce the load of the curriculum, we have followed an integrated approach in developing the textbooks. So, we will request our teachers to adapt the integrated approach whenever they are in the classroom process. They will find out that the books as you see in class 1, class 2 textbooks or in our environment book in class 3, 4, you will see that we have followed a sort of integrated approach. So, I will request our teachers to follow and adapt that integrated approach so that the load of the curriculum, the external load may be reduced. That was the first issue that was raised by Professor Joshpal and its committee. So, we have addressed it like that. And the second load was that the burden of non-comprehension. So, whenever students are reading something, they are studying something, they are not understanding in the classroom process. So, that was the termed as the burden of non-comprehension. Now, to reduce this burden of non-comprehensions, we as teachers have a huge role to play. Teachers will have to understand that the students will be understanding bit by bit. Students will be understanding things bit by bit. They will be understanding things in a very cordial manner, in a very friendly manner once their regular life experience has been utilized in the classroom process. Students will get a lot of support from the environment, they will get a lot of clues from the regular experiences. So, I will request our teachers, whenever they are designing their plan of action, whenever they are formulating their classroom process, their learning structure, so they please use the regular experience of the students in the classroom process so that the students may easily get into the classroom process. The second document that was mentioned by Purnenduda was National Curriculum Framework 2005 or NCF 2005. So, NCF 2005 is basically not a decontextualized document. It was basically a natural follow-up of the document that we termed the Learning Without Burden document in the 1993. So, in NCF 2005, as Purnenduda was saying, it has been envisaged that learning takes place in a very friendly manner if the learning process is from known to unknown, from local to global, from a sense of concrete to abstract. So, I will request our teachers, please use examples, from the known world of the students. Please do not just plunge into issues, do not just raise issues, do not just use examples which are very foreign to the students. Use local examples, use regular examples, use known words, known examples, known structures, so that students may understand that these are the things which we already witness in our life, which we regularly use in our life. Those are the part of the learning process. So, it is important that the students will be able to know many unknown things. Yeah, it is important that students will be able to know many foreign things as well. But if we start off the learning process right from the beginning in a foreign mode with foreign examples, students won't be able to adapt the process. Students won't be feeling very secure, students won't be feeling very confident if things are started with foreign examples. So, my humble request to my beloved teachers, my friends, that please start off the journey of learning from a known domain, with known examples, with concrete examples, with local examples, and gradually go beyond the local as your learning structure permits you. So, that was the second document as was mentioned by Purnenduda. The third document which was mentioned by Purnenduda was Right to Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009. Now, apart from many administrative academic issues, there are two very important words which were used in the particular act. In chapter 5 in chapter 5 of Right to Free and Compulsory Education Act, there is a particular line. It says, comprehensive and continuous evaluation of a child's understanding of knowledge and his or her ability to apply the same. Comprehensive and continuous evaluation of a child's understanding of knowledge and his or her ability to apply the same. Now, here we find two very important words. The first one was understanding and the second one is application. So, the entire learning structure as is suggested by RT Act 2009 is basically based upon these two key words. One is understanding and another is application. So, I will request our beloved teachers, please shift the focus from memorization, shift the focus of learning from rote memorization towards understanding and application. As Purnenduda was saying that in Delort's 4 learning pillar, there is a very important pillar, that is learning to do, learning to know and then learning to do. We can get into the process of learning to do something only once we understand things. We understand things, we can analyze them and we can apply them according to the need of the situation. Education is all about making life easy, making life comfortable and making life joyful. So, if we just devote the entire time in memorizing information, then basic motive of education gets defeated. So, I will request our teacher, please shift the focus from memorization towards understanding and application. Yeah, we must admit that information is important. Yeah, information is important provided we can use the information according to the need of the situation. Information is important. There is no arguing the fact. Information is important, but information is important provided we can use the information according to the need of the situation. The basic of focus of learning may be said in 3 lines. That's the ability to use creative thinking, the ability to use critical thinking and the ability to use the quality of problem solving. We won't be able to think creatively, we won't be able to think critically, we won't be able to solve problem if we really keep our focus on memorization. If only we use the process of understanding, the process of analyzing things in a better manner, if we try ourselves getting enabled to get things applied according to the need of the situation, then only these 3 qualities, to think creatively, to think critically and solve problems according to the need of the situation, will be realized in our regular life. So, I will request our teachers 3 major things. 1, use local examples in the learning process, that is the first thing. The second thing is try to involve your students in the learning process using the regular experience of their life. And the third thing is make your learning design, make your learning process, the learning structure in a manner so that the basic focus of learning is shifted from memorization towards understanding and application. Now, as we see in the slide, there is a learning triangle. You can see in the slide there is a learning triangle which plays a pivotal role in the learning process, in the classroom process. In the triangle, we can see there are three basic components of learning. The one is ELO, that is the expected learning outcome. The second one is the pedagogical process, and the third one is, as you can see, evaluation. That each component is preceded by a WH word. The first one, the expected learning outcome, you can see a WH word, that is what. And in the second point of the triangle, you can see WH word is how, with the word pedagogical process. And in the third point with evaluation, you can see another WH word, that is whether. So let us have a very brief discussion on these 3 points, which are so very important to make a positive, productive and involving learning process. The first one is ELO, or expected learning outcome. See, what is expected learning outcome? So you can ask yourself as a teacher, if I ask myself a question with the word what. Suppose I am entering a classroom, what am I expecting from the children to do at the end of the period? What I expect the children to show as an outcome after these 30 or 40 minutes of learning with me. So if you ask yourself, what is the aim of this particular period as you are entering the classroom? If you ask a question with what to yourself, what I am expecting the children to show as outcome after this 30 or 40 minutes of learning with me, the answer will be the expected learning outcome of this period. If I ask, suppose I am an English teacher and I am asking, whenever I am entering the classroom, I am asking myself the question, what am I expecting at the end of the period from the children? The answer is, maybe the students right now cannot use present continuous tense, but in this period I will discuss with the students how to use present continuous tense in a proper situation. So I will expect that after this 40 minutes period, my students of this classroom will be able to use present continuous tense according to the need of the situation. So use of present continuous tense will be the expected learning outcome of the period. So at this point, I will request my teachers to just note this issue, that whenever they will be entering the classroom, they will be asking a question to themselves with what they are expecting the children to show as an outcome at the end of this period. There should be a specific answer to the question towards themselves, because as teachers we are not very sure what is the aim of the period, then the learning process gets defeated, gets failed. So this is a very important issue. I will request my teachers so that they can have a specific learning outcome, a specified expected learning outcome whenever they are entering the classroom. That was the first point suggestion I would like to share with my teachers. Now here comes the second point. You see, there is the point, the pedagogical process. Now some say it's pedagogical process, some of us we call it the teaching learning process, some of us call it the activity. So whatever you call it, now the point is, if expected learning outcome, if we presume the expected learning outcome to be the aim or destination of the period. Suppose I am entering the classroom. My expected learning outcome of this period is use of present continuous tense. So that is the expected learning outcome. So if this be the destination of this period, there must be a way to reach the destination. there should always be a way to reach a destination, there should always be a process to reach a product. So, if use of present continuous tense is the expected learning outcome of the period, is the destination of the period, is the product of the period, then there must be a way or process to reach the expected learning outcome, that is the use of present continuous tense. So, here I will like to request my beloved teachers that whenever they are entering the classroom, they must have a specified expected learning outcome for the period. At the same time, they must have a plan of action, a sort of a learning design, a classroom process, a planned classroom process to reach the expected learning outcome. Because it is said that failing to plan is planning to fail. So, we must have a specific expected learning outcome whenever we are entering the classroom. At the same time, along with the expected learning outcome, we should have a specified process, that the process may be very flexible, because with the passage of time you might have to change some component of the process, but you should have a draft process to reach the product, that is the expected learning outcome. That is the second component of the learning triangle. And the third component of the learning triangle, as we can see, that is the particular word, we call it evaluation. So, as we are getting through the triangle, the process of learning, we can see we had an expected learning outcome. We had a specified expected learning outcome as we were entering the classroom. So, the first thing that we should have an expected learning outcome, followed by that we should have a process to reach the product, a way to reach the destination, a specified pedagogical process to reach the expected learning outcome. Now, it is not always that happens, it is not that always roads lead to destinations. I might have a road, I might have an avenue, but it might not help me to reach the destination. It might be that I have an expected learning outcome, say it is use of present continuous tense, I drafted a plan of action, but whether my plan of action, my pedagogical process helped the students to reach the destination, that is the expected learning outcome, that has to be checked back. The success rate of achievement, whether my students were able to achieve the expected learning outcome following the drafted pedagogical process, has to be evaluated, checked out. And the process of checking back whether students following the pedagogical process could achieve the expected learning outcome, this checking back process is called evaluation. Now, in our government schools, government aided school, government sponsored school, and the schools which are affiliated to the board, West Bengal Board of Primary Education, we follow a specific evaluation model that is called the Peacock model. In this through this Peacock model, we evaluate whether the students were able to achieve the specified learning outcome or not. In this evaluation process, we have two types of evaluation method. One we call the summative, another we call the formative. The summative one is that one that takes place maybe after 3.5 months. Usually the days are pre-declared, and the students are given questions, and the students have to write answers on the answer script. Now, that's a type of evaluation we call the summative evaluation. Now, then what is the formative evaluation? See, my dear teachers, formative evaluation is a kind of checking back process that takes place during the teaching learning process. Formative evaluation is the checking back process that takes place during the teaching learning process. One major difference between summative and formative evaluation is that One major difference between the formative and summative evaluation is that summative evaluation is always pre-declared, but formative evaluation is never pre-declared. Summative evaluation is always pre-declared, but formative evaluation is never pre-declared. We should try to ask our students, can you just tell me, could you please do these things here? Could you please come to the board and show us? Could you please tell the class? Could you please show in the map? This sort of checking back process in the classroom time is called formative evaluation. So, we as teachers should not declare any sort of test beforehand to use that as formative evaluation. Formative evaluation should never be pre-declared. Even if I just tell we will have a class test tomorrow, this class test becomes a sort of micro summative evaluation because it has been pre-declared. So, I would request my beloved teachers, please don't get into any sort of pre-declared test to satisfy the method of formative evaluation. It's just a normal sort of checking back process that happens during the classroom time, and it's just that sort of question we usually use in the classroom. Could you please come over here and use the board? Could you please tell the class the answer? Could you please narrate these things to us? Could you please show in the textbook? That sort of normal, natural, regular questions which are used in the classroom process to diagnose whether the students are on the right track to reach the expected learning outcome. Here this word diagnosis is so very important. There is a basic difference between summative evaluation and formative evaluation as far their characteristics are concerned. Formative evaluation by nature is diagnostic. It helps us to diagnose whether students are on the right track to reach expected learning outcome. And on the contrast, summative evaluation is more of judgmental. After 3 or 3.5 months of time, it helps us to make a sort of judgment whether students were able to understand and apply these sort of things in last 3 or 3.5 months. So, the first difference between formative and summative evaluation was that, as we said, formative is never pre-declared, summative is always pre-declared. The second difference is that formative is always diagnostic in nature, summative is always judgmental in nature. Now, as we use formative evaluation in the classroom process, we use 5 indicators to find out whether my pedagogical process is helping the students to achieve the expected learning outcomes. There are 5 indicators, 5 specified indicators, evaluation indicators in the Peacock model, which help us to understand whether students are on the right track to achieve the expected learning outcome. Now, which are those 5 indicators? As we can see in the slide, these are the 5 evaluation indicators as mentioned in the Peacock model. So, the first one is participation. It's so very important that the students are involved in the classroom process. Once the students are not involved in the classroom process, it's not possible for us to evaluate whether the students have understood or not, whether the students are able to do something or not. It's so very important that the students will be involved in the classroom process, they participate in certain things, then only we can have an assessment whether students are able to do certain things. And here I will request my teachers, let us not confuse presence with participation. Let us not confuse presence with participation, because presence is a physical issue. That student was present in the classroom. That doesn't justify whether the students did participate or not. Presence is a physical issue. participation is a physical as well as a psychological issue. So, our basic motive would be our basic motive as a teacher would be to convert the presence into participation. As a teacher, my first responsibility would be to convert the presence of the student into the participation of the student. Unless they participate, it won't be possible to get them into the classroom process, or it won't be possible for us to evaluate them whether they really understood or applied things according to the need of the situation. So, it's our first thumb rule that will be helping the students to get into the learning process, and for that we'll have to use their known examples so that they feel secured, they feel confident, they feel comfortable to get into the process. That was the first evaluation indicator. The second evaluation indicator, as you could see, was questioning and experimentation. We have always seen that we are given points or numbers or rewards only when we can answer a particular question correctly. We are given reward only when we can answer a question correctly. But it's very important point. But there are so many important questions which remain just covered in the heart and the brain of those little pupils. The students, they are little kids, they are little children. The basic difference between a child and a grown-up person is that the child always have plenty of questions. If a child just comes here and see me saying something over here, the child will feel like, who is this person? What is he speaking about? Why is he doing so? There will be so many questions that will be coming to the mind of the child. A child is always full of questions. Let us help the children to come up with the question, because question leads to experimentation, experimentation leads to learning. I would request our teachers, it's fine, it's nice, it's fair enough that they are given marks when they give a good answer, a right answer. At the same time, at the time of formative, at the time of classroom process, let us give them some marks whenever they come up with some very interesting question. Let us encourage the students to come up with the question that they have in their mind. Let us just not tell them give the answer to the question. Let us tell them, if you have any query, if you have any question regarding this issue, as you go through the textbook, if you have any question that comes into your mind, please let all know which question you have in your mind, because this question will help the class to get into the process of learning and will help the teacher to help the students to achieve the expected learning outcome. So, it's my second request, please encourage the students to come up with the question that they have in their mind. At the same time, you have another word in this particular indicator, experimentation. By saying experimentation, we don't mean that you will always be engrossed with science, mathematics and those sort of subjects. It's not that. By saying experimentation, we mean, if you feel like doing something new, do it. If you as a student feel like giving a short of answer, which is very innovative, give that answer. Don't just follow a given track. If you feel like there is something new in your mind, please speak it out or just write it down. You don't have to follow the law of robotics, the law of a given track. If something new comes into your mind, speak it out. There is no harm in saying something new. There is no harm in saying something innovative. There is no harm in saying something that is out of the track. Speak out the things that comes into your mind. If it be something new, something innovative, something out of the track, there is no harm in that. So, I will request our teachers to encourage the students, so that the students may also be encouraged to come up with answers which are new in shape and form, which are innovative in its formulation and which are out of the track in its execution. That's my second request. My third request would be that the third evaluation indicator is interpretation and application. We'll frame questions. It is usually seen we frame so many questions which are information based and close ended. We frame so many questions which are information based and close ended, and if we keep on asking close ended information based question, the learning focus will again be on memorization. So my request to our teachers is that please keep some questions which are based on why and how, because why leads to interpretation and how leads to application. Please, in the classroom process, yeah, it's important that you ask some information related question. There's no harm with that. But at the same time, I'll request our teachers to frame certain questions which are why and how based, because these are the questions that would help you to evaluate whether the students have really understood, have really interpreted, and whether the students are really able to apply things accordingly, because why leads to understanding and interpretation and how leads to application. So here comes my third request. Please, in the classroom process, along with the information based close ended question, keep some open ended why and how based questions, because this why and how would help you, these questions which are based on why and how would help you to understand, to evaluate whether students have really understood things and they are really able to apply things accordingly. That was my third request. My fourth request would be that in our textbook component, in our learning component, we come across many areas which deal with human values. In our learning component, in our textbook, in the curricular component, there are many areas which dwells on human values, deals with many things about do's and don'ts. So my humble request is to my teachers is that please discuss those areas of human values which could be a life-changing session for the student. As Purnenduda was saying, the 4 pillars of learning, there was a particular pillar which say learning to live together. We will be able to live together, we will be learn to live together if only certain human values are within ourselves, are practiced in our life, and are shared with the rest of the people in the society. So my humble suggestion is that whenever my teachers are in the classroom, whenever they are dealing with certain learning component, if there is any scope to deal with a certain human value, please discuss that, because we have this 4th evaluation indicator called empathy and cooperation, because without empathy and cooperation, learning is not complete. And you see, we have replaced sympathy with empathy, because in sympathy we have just got a feeling. I have a feeling for the person. The man is very sick, the man is a distressed situation. I am feeling for the person. Now, as I am feeling and doing nothing for the person, this won't amount to anything. If I feel for a person and don't do anything for the person, that is just mere sympathy, and that won't amount to anything. Sympathy is nothing unless that sympathy is converted into an action. A feeling is nothing unless that feeling is converted into an action. The action has to be a kind of helpful action, a kind of supportive action for the person. So only sympathy, mere sympathy is not enough. In sympathy, we only have a feeling, but once the feeling is complete and end in itself, this is nothing. If the feeling is converted into an action and the action comes as a support for a person, then sympathy is elevated to empathy. So I will request my teachers to let my pupils know, to have a kind of discussion on empathy and cooperation, have a kind of discussion on human values wherever there is a scope in the classroom process. And the fifth one, the fifth evaluation indicator, as we can see, was the indicator we call aesthetic and creative expression. Now, school is not all about making robots. There shouldn't be the law of robotics in the classroom process. A school is not a factory to develop thousands and millions of robots. There is a specific difference between a robot and a human being. There are some qualities that a robot, there are some human values, human qualities which a machine or a robot can't have. So, I'll request our teachers to encourage the students to come up with certain experimentations, certain creative expressions, so that whenever I am evaluating the copies of the students, whenever I am evaluating the expressions of the students, it doesn't seem like that the entire class comes up with a singular expression. Suppose there is a topic. On the topic, the students will have to write a paragraph. Suppose the students are given a topic and the students will have to write a paragraph on the given topic. So, please encourage the students to write those things which come directly in their mind. Let them not memorize a paragraph from outside source. Let them be thinking their bits on the given topic. Let them be thinking of their own experiences, and then they write that particular paragraph based on their experience, their feeling, their thinking. And it's not important that their particular expression should be, their particular expression should be similar to the rest of the classroom. It's not important to become a stereotype person. The students should be encouraged. The student should be encouraged to avoid stereotype answers. The student should be encouraged to avoid stereotype answers. Now, here comes a very important point. The students will be able to avoid stereotype answers provided as teacher we give some questions to them which are not stereotypes. If we give stereotype clues, if you give stereotype topics, then the students will be giving stereotypes answers. So, I will request my teachers to come up with some topics, some questions, some hints, some clues, some discussions which are not stereotype. Then only the students will be able to give answers which are not stereotype as well. So, in a nutshell, we have discussed what are the basic pedagogical issues of our curriculum, syllabus, textbook and evaluation structure, and what are the things we as a teacher can use or do in the process so that it becomes easy for the students to achieve the expected learning outcomes. Punenduda.
Thank you, Ratul. Ratul has elaborated on the learning triangle, and just as we go into the wrap here and to conclude this session, I'll just state that Ratul was particularly highlighting on a term which was called expected learning outcome, the learning outcome. And mind you, a learning outcome is always something that is demonstrable. A learning outcome can always be seen. Understanding a text cannot be a proper learning outcome. Rather, able to fill in the blanks with prepositions can be a learning outcome. So, in sum then, as we wrap this session, in sum then, it is quite understandable that the efficacy of a curriculum, syllabus and the textbook depends on your hands, I mean the hands of the teachers. So, we hope that you will shift the focus of your classroom transaction, as Ratul was requesting, from rote memorization to application. And once that shift happens, the children will be entering into a world of intrinsic joyful learning and you will observe magic revealing in your classroom. So that's it for this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.